Hey guys, welcome or welcome back to another video. I'm Nia and this is Plays by Playwrights. Really quickly, I want to take the time out of this video to thank every single one of you for being so patient and so kind regarding the differences in audio and the different editing styles. As I explained in the first video on this channel when I reviewed Fleabag, if you have not checked it out already, please do. I am new to this and I'm also a high school student. I have never done any serious editing before, nor any serious videography or a YouTube. I've never had a YouTube channel, like a serious YouTube channel. So, like I said, I'm very new to this and I appreciate all of the support and kindness regarding the audio and production of this. And it is very, very much warmly received and I am grateful for it so much. So, thank you all once again. So, this week's play is none other than the amazing Circle Mirror Transformation by Annie Baker. This play was such a humbling and relaxing read for me personally. It touched a lot on the world of theater. Speaking of the world of theater, I matched my outfit today to the central message and like setting of the play rather than the cover because I just thought it would be a little bit more interesting if I did it this way. Anywho, yeah, this play was so humbling and so nice and I really, really, really enjoyed it. The way I got introduced to this play is a little different than how I got introduced to Annie Baker herself. So I'm going to start off with how I got introduced to Annie Baker, and then I'm going to segue that into how I got introduced to this play. So the way I got introduced to Annie Baker was actually through my school, very similar to how I got introduced to Proof and how I got introduced to David Auburn. What ended up happening was in the fall semester of my freshman year, we had these things called general auditions. We have them every semester. And my school made us pick from a list of recommended contemporary plays in which we had to find a monologue from them and perform it for a jury, for lack of better words, and receive a grade on it. And in some cases, that would depend. It would basically decide what shows we were casted in for that season. So there were several very prominent playwrights and plays on the list. The three I read were The Flick, The Humans, and Proof, which ultimately I ended up doing my monologue from Proof. Now, The Flick is by Annie Baker, and when I first read it, I kind of was in a daze, so I don't quite think I understood it the way I should have. Simply because I was just reading it to like get it done and like figure out if there were any good monologues in it, which turns out there weren't any good female monologues in it. And I didn't feel comfortable playing a male because the only other monologues were for men. But anywho, and that's how I got introduced to the playwright. The play in itself, Circle Mirror Transformation, it was also on the list, but I decided not to do it because two people I already knew in my acting track that were also freshmen were doing it, and I was just like, there's no point at this point, So like I said, I landed on Proof eventually. However, the people who did do monologues from this play had glowing reviews from it. They really liked it. So while I was trying to figure out what plays to review on this channel, this one popped into my mind and I was like, you know what? I'm going to review it. And I'm so glad that I read it and did because I was pleasantly surprised in the best of ways. Circle Mirror Transformation received its world premiere at Playwrights Horizon in New York City on October 13th, 2009. It was directed by Sam Gold. The set and costume design were by David Zinn. The lighting design was by Mark Barton. The sound design was by Leah Gillespie. And the production stage manager was Alana Taylor. The cast was as follows: Schultz, played by Reed Birney. James, played by Peter Friedman. Marty, played by Deidre O'Connell, Lauren, played by Tracy Chimo, and Teresa, played by Heidi Shrek. So that is the original cast and production team. And matter of fact, the original director and the original cast are mentioned in this play, and the playwright says that this play is dedicated to them and the experiences that they all had together in terms of being in rehearsal and working together on this play. And as Annie Baker says in this particular copy of Circle Mirror Transformation, she says that these people really helped restore her faith in community and nonprofit theater, which is so amazing because I just want to take the time to say that being the current state of America, not to be political, the arts are at risk. A lot of extracurricular things are at risk right now. So helping community theaters, helping small businesses, anything of that nature is so imperative right now to keep these traditions and ideas and creativity alive in this country and other countries as well that are facing similar circumstances. If you can donate to a local community theater or put a ticket link on your Instagram or anything along the lines of that regarding theater or anything that needs to be promoted, do it because it really goes a long way and it really helps. That being said, this play is so heavily tied to theater, hence the outfit. And I really love that. At first, I didn't think I was going to enjoy it because I tend not to like plays about, not necessarily plays about plays because this wasn't about a play, but plays that are just very theater plot heavy. But I was pleasantly surprised. I actually really did like this play. I found it very grounding. Um, why I say grounding is because it didn't have a really strong, punch you in the face conflict. Not that there was no conflict. The conflict in this, I would argue, is time, and the time in the sense of learning people and learning human behavior and growing closer to people. Because throughout this play, we see different relationships bloom, but we also see them wither, and we also see them morph into things that they've never been before. And there's so many things that happen within this play, which I really enjoy. So to get into the specifics of it, this play takes place during the summertime in this made up town called Shirley, Vermont, which is based off of Amherst, Massachusetts, which is where the lovely Annie Baker grew up. So, anywho, Shirley, Vermont. It's actually in the series of Annie Baker's Vermont plays, which all take place in and around this fictional town of Shirley, Vermont. And anywho, this play takes place at this local community center, and the teacher of this theater class is Marty. Marty is a middle-aged woman, very spunky. She's very Rosemary-esque. You know the song, the like, oh, my love goes where my Rosemary goes. That song. I probably butchered the lyrics, but yeah, she gives off that character quite a bit. And she is accompanied by her husband, who is very much an academic compared to her, named James. And James he's here to support her essentially. There is also this person named Schultz. Schultz is a carpenter and he is somewhat newly divorced and is taking this class in order to blow off steam and to just learn new things about himself. His arguable female counterpart in the sense of who parallels him the most, I would say, is Teresa. Teresa is a professional actress and she moves down to Vermont for a few reasons. One of them being that her father is sick and she's moving here to essentially support him and be close to him in his final days. And then there is also the fact that she is fresh out of a very toxic, abusive relationship with her now ex-boyfriend. And she is in Vermont to essentially regain her sense of self and become the best version of herself she can be apart from this tumultuous relationship she was in. And then, last but not least, there is Lauren. She is a teenager and she is at this community center. The main reason to better her theatrical skills and increase her chances of getting a role in her high school's production of West Side Story, preferably the role of Maria. And something that I kind of picked up on was to get away from some of her familial problems that she's having, being that her parents are in a messy, not divorce, but they're going through a rough patch, and she's trying to get away from all of that. So yeah, that those are the characters, right? And these characters all have such different but intertwining personalities, and I think that is so beautiful and so profound and gets showcased the best ways in this play. How we get to know these characters, though, is the really, really fun part. The way we get to see these characters' personalities and learn about them is through a series of theater games, right? These theater games, a few of them I've actually had the privilege of playing in some of my own school and non-school related productions that I've had and rehearsals, things of that nature, and they are 100% fun. I love them so, so, so much. There are, like I said, there were many. One of them being I call it the counting game. It goes by many names, but essentially what happens is you are in a room. You can turn the lights off. You can lay down on your back. You could do whatever. But you're in the room with your castmates or your crewmates or your classmates or peers, whomever. And you all are supposed to essentially stand in a circle and count sequentially. And only one person is allowed to speak at a time. And the point of this game is to build trust and build understanding of self and others while reciting these numbers, right? And if two people speak at the same time, then you start over from one. I have to say a personal flex. In a recent production at my school, I was casted in our school's, again, I try not to give out my location of where I am, but long story short, my school does this thing where students of both the high school and college will submit original plays, short plays, to be produced at the school in this festival, this like hour to hour long festival. And this past year, I had the privilege of being in one of them, which was a very movie heavy piece, which I thought was really unique, considering that none of the other pieces were really like movement heavy. And my director and my castmates and the stage manager are all such amazing people. So big shout out to them. But yeah, Iris was actually also in this production, so it was really, really fun to be in a cast with people that I'm familiar with and be able to learn so much more about theater and just collaboration with these amazing people. But back on to the point, the reason I bring that up is because we were actually able to get to like 100 plus while counting, which you guys might say, oh, that might not be that hard. Oh, no, it is hard. Trust me, it is not an easy thing because you hesitate, you try to second guess yourself. But the thing about that game is you're not supposed to. You're supposed to just feel the feeling in the room and know when to speak and when not to speak, and to trust yourself if you're about to speak. That's the point of the game. So, yeah, that's really cool. That's one game. And throughout it, you see when the more and more they play it, the more in sync they get in the sense of they're able to get high to higher numbers, right? The initial goal was to count to 10, and it took them several weeks to get to that goal. But once they hit that goal, it was so amazing to see that these people were starting to really, really know each other and really, really trust each other, which I thought was amazing, right? So that was one game. There was also another game. I'm gonna bring up three of these games. Okay, so that's one. So two, I would have to say, that's hard. That is so hard. Because there's like five games. So if I say four, then I might as well say the fifth one. But anywho, there is this game where essentially a person, right? So let's say Marty, and this actually did happen. Marty stands at the front of the room and she decides to introduce herself as someone else in the class. In this case, she decided to introduce herself as Lauren. And within this monologue, you are supposed to share what you know about this person, um, to whatever dexterity that person is comfortable with. You know, you don't want to air the person's business out there. But you're supposed to share what you know about that person as that person and kind of give them subtle advice, like, you know, like, don't be so hard on yourself, or know that you are important, things of that nature. Know that it will get better, things like that. So that's what happens in the play. That's another theater game they play. And as the play continues and as it goes on, you are able to see these monologues, A, become longer, and B, become more complex and personal, which I think is so cool because it started off as like, oh, this is so and so, and I know them from this, done, right? But then it became these long, complex monologues of emotion, talking about people, saying what they needed to hear and what you thought about them in the best of ways, which I thought was really cool. So that's two. And three, well, I'm going to mention three over another one, which I'll briefly say it's called Circle Mirror Transformation. That's where the play got its name from. You essentially are in a circle and one person is it. You explode and try to tag a person. And it's a movement heavy game. There, I explained it. Wow. Anyway, why I'm choosing to explain in depth this particular game over the one I just mentioned, Circle Mirror Transformation, is because this is where a lot of people's, I wouldn't say ulterior motives, but subconscious motives or complexes get released. Um, in this game actually sprouted from another game where you're supposed to essentially say, they call it when I go to India, but you can do any country. So they're like, when I go to India, I'm going to bring a purple shawl and a da-da-da and a da-da-da and a da-da-da. And it goes around in a circle and you're supposed to say everything that has already been said and then add a new thing. And it just continues and continues and continues, right? And so why they end up switching games is because Schultz gets out and he's also kind of in a mood, which I will get to later. But and it's a very competitive game, but the class is not meant for competition. It's meant for community building. So they switched the game. And in this game, which is very heavily community building, but I wouldn't say it worked out in the way it should have, you are supposed to write down a secret or a truth that's very hard for you to tell to people on a sheet of paper. And you mix it up in a big hat and you randomly pull out ones and you're supposed to read them. And you don't write your name on it. It's completely anonymous. And the point of reciting them is to say them so whoever wrote them knows that it's been heard and they can kind of like let go of it. For it to be a judgment-free zone, and also for people to read this, see it, and just in a way just like be like, this happened. And like you're not supposed to give it away if you think you know who wrote it or if you wrote it or anything like that, right? That's the point. So it is it is quite interesting because throughout these truths they vary in complexity, right? They vary in depth. I believe it was Lauren who wrote this one, but we will never know. But essentially I believe that Lauren wrote one where this actually was written, but I'm saying I think Lauren wrote this particular one. Um she was saying that I secretly believe I'm the smartest person on the whole planet, right? Paraphrasing, but that was the gist. And she kind of gave it away because she started giggling. So, you know, the way we know it was you. But anywho, within the context, you were able to discover that it was her. But anywho, and then they divulge into, I think I might secretly have a crush on Teresa, or I feel stuck, or things like that nature. And it really is very, very, very interesting. Why I say that was so important is because at that point, so many characters get put on blast. And that was wild to me. What happens is throughout this play, Marty, I'm going to go down the list I'm pretty sure this is how they were introduced. So, no, I'll just go off of who I think of, right? So, Marty and James are married, right? And they are, for the most part, in a good relationship. However, they do have their problems, like every other marriage, every other relationship, right? What is currently going on in their world, however, is one thing that ends up later becoming two things, right? So, firstly, James is not speaking with his his biological daughter from his first marriage, because her and Marty are very, very close. And Marty essentially told James's daughter, in passing, really quickly, not ill intently, but really quickly, that James had cheated on the child's mother, not Marty, James's first wife, right? And apparently the child had never known that, and the child was very upset about that, and she went excommunicado with her father, right? And James was upset about that because he was like, it wasn't even that deep. According to them, they had all been over it. Like, it wasn't, it was water under the bridge for the most part. But the daughter didn't see it that way. So that was one thing. And then another thing that happened was, over time, the readers are able to see that James is attracted to Teresa romantically. And that gets developed throughout the play. And the sheet of paper that says, "I think I'm in love with Teresa," or "I think I like Teresa," I'm pretty sure that was James who wrote it. Schultz wrote something else that was very clearly Schultz, because he was hurt because what happened with him and Teresa was essentially they got into a relationship, and Teresa's commitment level wasn't all the way there. And one week, this is what happened essentially. They were talking, and Teresa one week was blowing up Schultz's phone, and Schultz didn't mind. He was like, "Oh, I like this attention," right? However, the following week, Teresa did not keep with that energy, and that was very inconsistent in Schultz's opinion, and that really hurt his feelings, right? And he even made the point to consistently reach out to her, but she did not reach out back, and like I said, that hurt his feelings, and that was not super duper fun, right? So after they kind of split up, they weren't like in like a relationship, but they were in a relationship nonetheless. And after they split up, James starts to notice just how, like, personality wise, how much he likes Teresa. And Teresa's a lovely person, don't get me wrong. From this play, you're able to see her grow so much in confidence and strength, regarding her self-worth, and after leaving her toxic relationship. But James starts falling for Teresa, which is not okay, because, like, dude, you're married. Stay in your lane. But, so that's that. And that gets uncovered in that game. And Marty, in the script, she reads it, because it was actually, she's the one who got that paper. She reads it and she's like, "Okay, you know what? We're out of time." So class dismissed. And the next week, you can see that there's a huge amount of tension between Marty and James and Teresa. And arguably Schultz and Teresa, Schultz and James. But anywho, so yeah, that happens. And that all gets discovered throughout time. Hence why I say that time is essentially the conflict and the enemy of this play. Time is an everlasting force. As long as the earth is spinning, as long as humanity exists, as long as this universe exists, there will be time. So you can't get rid of it, for lack of better words, unless you're dead. But no one's dead in this play, so, but that's the case. And it's just, it goes to show that you can't change that. And time can either strengthen people individually or in a community, or it can break apart people in a community or individually. It just depends on how you use it, And yeah, in the play, at the end of the play, my whole setup just fell beneath me. But anyway, in the play, you are able to see the later on, the way the ending scene ends is essentially fast. It, like, mid-scene, the lights darken in the room. So Schultz, Marty, Teresa, and James were all, like, off in a corner. But then the entirety of the stage blacks out to the point where the only two people you can see are Lauren and Schultz. And they're talking back and forth, and this is like 10 years later, and they're saying, how life has treated them, right? And as the readers come to find out, James and Marty are no longer together. Marty moved to either Arizona or New Mexico. I think it was New Mexico. Um, just different things like that. And you just see how time essentially split people apart. But at the same time, you could argue that time strengthened these people individually, which is the bittersweet truth about reality. So, yeah, this play, like I said, it was very grounding, very humbling, and it was an amazing read. The dialogue in this play, I'll mention this later in the likes and dislikes, but the dialogue in this play was so well written, in my opinion. I thought that it was so natural. And the use of the pauses and the silences and long silences and the long, you get the point. Um, I thought were at first read I was very confused, but once I started like imagining how this would play out on stage and just reading it as if I were on stage and as these characters, I thought that the pauses were an excellent choice in terms of building realism and naturalism within this play. So let's get into the analytics of this play. What does it symbolize? What does it mean? This is going to be a little short because I feel like it really, really couples with what I said in the overview. However, this play, if you had to analyze it, it just goes to show how time affects people. What happens when time is not a removable factor? What happens when you put strangers into a room together, force them to bond in a nice way, but force them to bond, and then inevitably they drift apart? You know, in this play, you are able to see all of these people who have arguably broken parts of them begin to heal themselves, but at the same time, somewhat hurt others, you know, and that just goes to show what time really does to people. I think that it was cool. I think that the idea of it being at a community center and it being people who are within neighborhoods of each other but don't know each other was an interesting touch, and that it really made it feel so much more closer to home for the reader, because most people, unless with all due respect you live in rural Kentucky, stop, but you get the point. Unless you live in like an ostracized part of your state or your city or country or wherever you may be watching this from or whatever, unless you're in that situation, you have a community center somewhere in your city. I know me personally, I could walk to my community center. There are other community centers within my county that I could take buses to, and it is it just goes to show that like community can be so strong and such a beautiful thing and such a homey thing. It's also really cool how this was based off of the experiences that Annie Baker had while in rehearsal with these actors and with the director, and in later rehearsals with the crew, which I think is super duper cool, because it just goes to show the collaborative spirit of theater and the arts in general, which is something really cool. It's a really cool thing when you think about it. So, the lovely, lovely, lovely playwright Annie Baker was born in April of 1981, and she is a great playwright. There have been several people that I've spoken to and videos that I've watched that regard her as one of the best playwrights of our time. I have not read enough of her plays to come to that conclusion, but I'm not going to sit here and doubt it. I really, really enjoyed the naturalism and simplicity but beauty in her dialogue skills and her writing. I actually watched a video where she gets interviewed and she says that the dialogue is the last thing she thinks about, and it's also the easiest for her because it's just humans and what happens. She's like, once I have an idea of what I want the play to be about and I have it structured and I have this setting and all of this, it's so easy to write the dialogue because she really, really takes the time to rationalize and contextualize the character she creates, which I think is an amazing skill. To, really, really hype her up, she is so heavily critically acclaimed for the flick, for Circle Mirror Transformation, for John, which is another play of hers, and many, many others. She has been awarded Obie Awards and Pulitzers and so many things of that nature, which I think is so cool. She also comes from a very academic background. Her brother is actually an author, and her father and mother are academics themselves. So it goes to show just how the idea of writing, in a sense, was ingrained into her. She went to Tisch, NYUC. Oh my gosh, wow, NYUC. NYU, Tisch School for Dramatic Writing, and then later went to Brooklyn College for playwriting. And that's where she really honed in on her skills of writing and playwriting, which I have to say I'm so thankful for, because without it, we probably wouldn't. We probably would not have this. So yeah, Annie Baker, she's amazing, and I can't wait to read more of her plays and hopefully possibly review some of them. This segment, like I say in every video, is based off of the research I've done on the play and my experience reading the play, and it is based off of my opinion predominantly. It is based off of what I have seen, what I've heard, and it is not meant to negate the hard work of the playwright or the cast, I'm going to say cast because any production at all. It's not meant to negate the hard work of the crews of these varying productions of this particular play or anything along the lines of that. It is simply my opinion based off of what I read and how that resonated with me. So, without further ado, let's get into it. What did I like? I liked the idea of this play. I thought that it was so simple yet unique. I have yet to read a play where it's about theater, which there are many. Don't get me wrong. There are many plays. There are many theatrical plays about theater. Please do not get me wrong. But I thought that the way that this play approached this aspect was so cool, and it was so simple and warming, but well done. That's what I think. I also really, really like the characterization of these characters. I thought that they were such real people, similar to how I see Proof, honestly. I saw the characters of Proof as real people, and I saw these characters as real people with such differing personalities, but nonetheless real people, which I thought was really dope. I also have to say that I like the idea of the pauses. I mentioned that earlier, but I was skeptical at first, I must admit, but once I reread the script and once I honored them, like she says, you have to honor them. The actor, the reader will subconsciously want to speed it up because you're going to think that you're going too slow, but you don't do that. This play is rooted in realism. It's rooted in naturalism, and people don't rapid fire. That's not a thing, you know? I mean, sure, it can happen, but that's not natural. That's not what people normally do. So that was the idea of adding those pauses was just, I really liked it. I thought that was a smart, smart, smart move. Dislikes. I like to ponder on the dislikes because I don't want to say anything and then, like, I won't necessarily say take it back, but I don't want to say anything that is so, I don't know. I just like to think about it before I say the dislikes. I don't want to trigger anyone. But any dislikes, I feel like I can't quite fairly give a dislike because the first time I read it, it flew over my head. So that's that. Um, I think this is a personal thing, but I tend to really like plays with like very intense conflicts, you know? And not every play, wouldn't necessarily be a dislike, but not every play has to have an intense conflict. And in this case, this play did not, which is not something that I am against. I thought it was quite cool. So, hey, you know, it's not bad, but it's not bad in the slightest. But I don't think there is any particular thing that I so strongly dislike in this play. The utilization of different props and its comedic moments in there. There were a few comedic moments, but the playwright makes a point of saying that the reason why the pauses are in there is because A, it's meant to be a realistic naturalist play, and B, without the pauses, it just becomes a comedy, becomes satire. And this play is not meant to be satire, it's meant to be real life, which I think that's a great way of looking at it. So yeah, I don't think there are any dislikes. I mean, I'm not gonna complain about the font size because I feel like I do that in almost every play. But like, let's be real, you know. Um, Another thing that I do like is how how simplistic this set is, because Iris and I Iris has not read this play, at least not to my knowledge. But Iris and I are currently on a hunt for a play that we can put on as a studio show our junior year. And we were initially thinking about Arsenic and Old Lace, and Arsenic and Old Lace, the set design is just a little too complicated to replicate for a mini black box theatrical space. But because this takes place in a dance room, essentially, that's a very easy thing to replicate because at our theater school we have several dance rooms with mirrors. So that is really, really cool. And I think I'm actually gonna pitch it to her, when and hopefully if and hopefully when she watches this video. Iris, I think we should, girl. I think we should. But yeah, so yeah, those are my takes when it comes to my likes and dislikes on this play. Like I always say, just because I don't like something doesn't mean that you should not like something. You know, it's my opinion and you have a right to your own, and whatever it is, just be respectful, be kind, and I'll be kind and respectful. I don't mind it at all. I love hearing differing opinions. It's late, guys. But I love hearing differing opinions and differing perspectives when it comes to theater and things in general. So yeah. What can you and I take away from this play? This is probably my 8th time saying it, but time is truly a thief. But it also is very rewarding at the same time. In terms of why it would be a thief, it broke apart so many of these relationships. As we can see by the end of this play, no one is really in touch with anyone anymore. There might be a postcard here and there. There might be, if I see you inside the supermarket, I'll say hello. But no one genuinely keeps up with everyone else. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of sad when you think about it, but that's life. That happens. I've been in situations where there were people I was incredibly close to, but then after a while, we stopped talking, we split apart, and that's a part of life, and it's okay. So that's that. So that'd be my takeaway. People are human, people err, people laugh, people smile, people cry, people hurt, and that makes them people. That makes them human. That makes them alive. And everyone has a right to grow. And if that ends up breaking apart a relationship, then so be it. Because it's worth it. Especially if it's not going to hurt the other person and it's going to benefit the both of you. So guys, that is all for this video. Please do not forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, all of that good stuff, especially if you want to help support this channel and come back to these videos for me to keep making these videos and so much more. Please recommend this to friends and family, even if they're not into theater and even if they're not into video essays or anything like that. Please share and just communicate and boost the channel, guys. Yeah, help a incoming sophomore out. By the time this drops, I will be a sophomore though, so go sophomores. But yeah. So that's all for this video, guys. Please in the comments type any plays that I should review. If you have been in a production of any of the plays I've reviewed or will be or are planning on producing a production of a play review, please reach out and share your opinion on anything that you've learned while reading the script or possibly watching a production of it, or even if it's been turned into a movie like Arsenic and Old Lace or a TV show like Fleabag. Please share what you've learned from watching those. So yeah, that is all for this video. See you next time, dramaturgs. Bye bye.